I was on the App Store today and I saw that there was a Sesame Street app called Incarceration.
What do you mean incarcerated?
When you're in jail.
When you're in jail. My uncle was in jail when I was younger, and it was hard.
Seemed odd to me for a second, but then I remembered that I've seen a documentary about Sesame Street going to prison. It was 1977, the same year that Star Wars came out in theaters, and on PBS, they were showing a documentary called Sesame Street Goes to Prison. It was 27 minutes long, and it was a very well-respected and highly reviewed documentary. Sesame Street co-creator Joan Gans Cooney said that Sesame Street had to be in prison because children were there visiting their parents, and anywhere the children were, that's where Sesame Street needed to be. The documentary was about a program, which I'll dig into, but basically the idea was to create these sort of daycare centers for the children of incarcerated inmates so that when they went there to visit their parents, there was this Sesame Street influence. The idea sounded controversial to people, and what Joan said was, most of these children understand that this isn't school. They've been through traumatic experiences, the split up of their homes, their fathers or mothers going away, and then visiting them and having to leave that parent again. These kids know exactly what's going on and that it's not fun.
You seem sad.
I am sad, Timmy. I've been looking at the prison conditions in America and the whole system is just so horribly broken.
My daddy's in jail right now.
My daddy's in jail.
My daddy's in jail and people pay money to see him.
Yeah, that's actually a zoo. That's different.
It's easy to make light of this. The idea of Cookie Monster being charged with Grand Theft Auto after stealing a Chips Ahoy truck, or Elmo shivving a snitch in the joint, but obviously, this is a very serious subject and kind of a very important thing for Sesame Street to do for these particular children.
In the United States, there are 2.7 million children who have a parent in prison or jail.
Emma and Abby have some friends whose mommy or daddy are in prison or jail.
And heck, Sesame Street has made light of the concept of a Muppet going to prison.
Cookies!
This is hopeless.
Baby, this'll cheer you up. A, B, C.
Oh no! Let me out of here! It's torture!
In 2003, it transpired that U.S. intelligence services tortured detainees with Sesame Street music for days.
Let me out of here! It's torture!
Now, this documentary was based on a federal prison program that Sesame Street was working on with the government. The program was called Maintaining and Strengthening Family Ties. The idea was to create a daycare setting with the familiar Sesame Street characters. Here are some photographs from the program. These are some of the inmates interacting with the children. Now, these aren't their children. The idea was for the inmates to be able to interact with other children. Now, they originally tested it and filmed it at the Seagoville Federal Corrections Institution in Dallas, Texas, and the Federal Correction Institute in Fort Worth. So the idea was this. If you have a husband that's in prison, the wife and the child come to the prison. The wife goes, visits the husband. The child stays in this Sesame Street daycare center. After they have some visiting time together, the father and the mother go into the daycare center and are able to interact with the child there. The child would be in this daycare setting with a prison guard as well as some of the inmates. The child would watch an episode of Sesame Street or The Electric Company, and then the caregivers, who were fellow inmates, would play games and sing songs and maybe play with little puppets.
Bert! Bert! You up there, Bert? I think I lost him.
Oh, we can't have lost Bert.
And they were watched over very carefully. I want to read you a little bit from a couple of the articles I found. So there was a little girl visiting. I've got a new song for you, she tells inmate Marco Marchial, 23, as she bangs on a toy xylophone. What is your favorite song? Asks Marchial, a drug smuggler from Sonora, Mexico. Trina bangs again for Marco, and he persuades her to demonstrate her talent for counting in English and Spanish.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Here's another one. Jimmy Brown, now finishing a 3-year sentence for stock fraud, had not expected prison life to be like this. A giggling child sitting on his lap, calling him her best friend. 8-year-old Irene was also surprised the first time she came to the Manhattan Correctional Center, the city's new federal prison. She had come to visit her father and found Sesame Street instead. I've never been in prison. I'm hoping I never have to go. But I feel like if I was in prison and my little girl is on another inmate's lap...
Hi.
The documentary was a hit with critics and won several awards. It won the IFPA Cindy Award, American Film Festival Blue Ribbon, and the Cine Golden Eagle. The head of the project was Mary Greene.
First, I would just like to say it's been some time since the film was made, and many of the persons that were shown in the film are no longer incarcerated, and many of them...
It's a good sign.
Right. I think the work that's been done at Seagoville and Fort Worth has been excellent.
Mary Lee Dodd Greene was a civil rights activist, and she was an advocate of early childhood education, and she wanted to help bring Sesame Street to underserved communities. It's very important to think about. Sesame Street had debuted less than a decade before this.
Sally, you've never seen a street like Sesame Street. Everything happens here. You're gonna love it. Hello, Big Bird.
Oh, hi, Gordon.
How are you?
The prison program was very important to Mary Greene. She believed the community had a responsibility to the prisoners to try to help them get to a place where they wouldn't have as much recidivism, they wouldn't be coming back to the prison, they wouldn't be committing new crimes. And one of the things that they thought was a program like this, where these hardened, tough guys are spending time with little children, kind of gives them a glimpse of the outside world. So it's helpful to them. It puts them in a space where they're learning some new skills, and also it's helpful to this child who has to go into the prison anyway. Now, the program started in Texas. We heard about that one happening in New York. It also expanded to West Virginia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Kentucky, and California. Now, there were obviously a lot of concerns. They thought maybe one of these inmates might act inappropriately with the children. So they tried their best to screen to get people that had been in the prison for a while, had a clean record in the prison, didn't have any crimes that they thought were in any way ones that would indicate that they were a harmful person to children. And they hoped that that would help weed them out. Obviously, also, there was a guard there the entire time. I found no evidence of any incidents ever happening during this program.
Every weekend, visiting day at this Atlanta correctional facility turns into a full-fledged program of Sesame Street. The prisoners here say they do it for the fun of it.
You have to understand the time period. Conjugal visits had first started in the 1950s, but it wasn't until the 1970s, about 3 years before this documentary, that any state allowed children to go visit their parents when they were in prison.
Happy, I have a great idea. What's that? Why don't you sing us another Christmas carol?
I found a message board thread about it on Muppet Central, and you can see that they're saying, hey, this is not worth watching. There are no cast members from Sesame Street in it, and there are no real Muppets.
Our aim with the program was to find something to do with the children. We hoped that we could do something besides just babysitting. We could do something that was educational and entertaining at the same time.
Ernie, we're going to have to make our plans.
Somehow I knew you were going to say that, Bert.
This person says to avoid it at all costs, can't believe that it's part of the Museum of Television and Radio's collection at the Paley Center. Well, that's where I saw it. For those of you who may not know about the Museum of Television and Radio in New York City, you have to think of it more like a library of television and radio. When I went, you sat in a cubicle and you requested film. You'd have headphones on and you'd watch it. And that was it. You couldn't take it home. You couldn't make a copy of it, but you could see it. And I thought it was interesting. I thought it was very sad. You saw these people that obviously these people, some of them were evil people. Some of them are people that got caught up in bad things and made too many of the wrong decisions. But all of them were stuck in this place. It terribly affected their children. And you saw the pain on both family members. And while it was attempting to be uplifting by showing how this program worked, it was really sad to watch. Now, Sesame Street has not stopped working on this. They kept going with this program. Here's an article from 1993 that describes how a new Sesame Street daycare center was opening in Hartford, Connecticut. And then I have an article from 20 years after that where they increased their efforts. This is in Ocala, Florida, and they actually sent the Sesame Street characters to visit with the kids.
I'm gonna sing some songs for you. How to get to Sesame Street.
I think it'll be very helpful to have tips and resources from Sesame Street and all that.
In 2013, Sesame Street created a Muppet character named Alex who has a parent who is in jail.
Yeah, just ask your daddy.
Well, he can't do it.
Oh, why not? Is he visiting someone? Yeah, where'd he go? Yeah, where?
My dad's in jail.
I don't believe we ever see his father, but I have a theory that it's Lefty.
What do you sell?
8.
I mean, he's a pretty shady guy. This all wasn't very surprising to learn about. Sesame Street has tackled some very serious topics. I remember when Mr. Hooper died and the very sad way that it's presented to Big Bird. They have a character with autism, they have a Muppet whose mother has an addiction problem, and they've tackled divorce.
Really? Your parents are divorced too?
Yeah, happened when I was just a little hatchling.
Little Bird's parents got divorced? You know what this means? Little Bird's mom is single. Hey, Mama Bird. Tweet, tweet. You go fly south for the winter, if you know what I mean. I don't even know what I mean. All right, let's check this app out. Sesame Street, Little Children, Big Challenges, Incarceration, English or Spanish.
Hope you find peace for yourself. New boyfriend ain't gonna fill the void.
Hey, big shout out to everybody on Patreon. I send those postcards once a month to everybody, including Cheese God, Chris, Awkward But Awesome, Matthew, David, Chapin, and Michael and Jessica.
He did what? He grabbed your bologna sandwich and started to eat it?
So they have information here for parents and caregivers. There's a children's storybook, In My Family. This book belongs to Guy Hutchinson. Tonight is family fun night at school. My friends come with their moms and dads. I come with my Uncle George. We're going to have so much fun, he says. I want to have fun, but I miss my daddy. He's in prison, so he can't be here. Then my cheeks get hot and I start to cry. I miss my daddy, I say. I wish he was here. That's okay, says Uncle George. I cry sometimes too when I miss your daddy. I'm feeling better now, I say. I grab my Uncle George's hand. This is my Uncle George. He's in my family. Hola, says Rosita to him, and then she asks me, do you and Uncle George want to come and play? Yeah, I say, we play pilots. So now I can take a picture of myself with any of them. Oh. It's me and Jada. It's me and Uncle George. By the way, you like my Sesame Place windbreaker? This is like an employee jacket. I got this. I wrote a book for Sesame Place. You can find it on Amazon. It's called Sesame Place. And I talked about all kinds of interesting things. One of the things was they had the largest collection of computer games when they opened, which was just about 3 years after this documentary. And that collection of computer games was overseen by Joyce Hackison and Steve Jobs. It's a fascinating story. And I was able to get a copy of those games. And so I think I'm the only person that has played those games since like the mid-80s. You can watch me do that in a video that's going to pop up right here. Otherwise, YouTube says this one is what's best for you. And I'll see you next time.